Hi, Gene here with today's thought. This is going to seem like a strange question until I answer it, but what do President Macron of France and Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel have in common? Take, I don't know, half a second to think about it. You probably don't know the answer, so I'm going to give it to you right now. They both have to deal with raging left wing mobs. Now, in France, the raging left wing mobs are raging because, get this is going to seem strange to you, us Americans, because the retirement age in our country is 67 years old. In France, until very recently, it was 62. They just raised it to 64. And when Macron announced that he was going to raise the retirement age just 2 years and just to 64, the left, the mob, they just took to the streets and they've been setting bonfires, destroying property. Just I don't know. Go on Google or YouTube, and you'll see the. I'm not going to bore you with the videos of this, but you can see that. Now, if you go to Israel, Israel wants to, or the what it's really about is that the right won there's left and right. The right won the left the last election, and they actually want to govern from the right. They want to govern as they were elected to govern, and they haven't been able to. This has always been true, or it has been true. At least since I think 1996. The problem is their Supreme Court, their High Court, which is nothing like ours. I won't go into the details today. If you ask me to, I will in a future vlog. I may already have in a past vlog, but they're basically like Ayatollahs. The Supreme Court in Israel, the way it's organized, they gave themselves absolute power to really decide anything. You don't even have to bring a case to the court. Just bring a petition. They'll order people fired. They'll strike down laws, even though Israel doesn't have a constitution. They don't. It's a parliamentary system. They don't have a written constitution. So the way the court is structured, its successors, new justices have to retire at 70, and the new justices are chosen by a committee, and the committee is structured in such a way that the court, the committee includes three members of the High Court, the Chief Justice and two other justices, and if they all three stick together, they can veto any appointment. So they essentially decide who gets to sit on the Supreme Court. So in Israel's early days, it was very left-wing. They were almost communist until actually Bibi Netanyahu came in as finance minister, and he learned from Ronald Reagan, liberalized the economy, blah, blah, blah. And now Israel is a so-called startup nation and has moved much so far to the right that the Labor Party, which was the main party in the early days, barely won enough seats to qualify to get into the Knesset, and they have maybe 4 seats, I think, out of 120, for the total Knesset. So there's a reform going through to change the court, to give politicians, as in our country, the decision of who sits on the court. But once on, they can't be fired, so they're independent. The whole point is the left doesn't like that, because that's our only hope. They have no power really in Israel other than this court that always rules in their favor, this left-wing court that was created in 1948, 1949, and because of the way justices are appointed, it's remained a very far left-wing court all the way up until today. And what they do is they let when the left is in power, has been in power, they can do whatever they want. The court just rubber stamps it. But when the right is in power, suddenly these laws are getting struck down. And the court never did that until 1996, when a new Chief Justice came in. In Israel, they have no constitution, but they enacted something called the Basic Laws, guaranteeing certain rights, and I won't go into detail. The point is that then this justice this Chief Justice said, okay, well, we have a constitution now, but they don't. It's something called basic laws, and it's specifically not a constitution. That's why they called it basic laws, to make it clear it's not a constitution. But the court took that as a cue to start striking down laws, and they also rule on something called reasonableness. So they can say, let's say, if somebody, if the prime minister appoints an officer, a cabinet member, or a minister, lesser minister, the court can decide, well, that's not reasonable, you got to fire him. And that's what, so the rights finally had enough. The point is, they were about to pass a laws, they're all ready to go, and the left, they just poured into the streets, and you can see they have all the wonderful, Israeli flags, but they have so much. It's obvious to me that they're being funded out from sources outside of Israel, and they're paying for them to do that. They have there are soldiers, Air Force pilots refusing to report for duty for training. You have the airport shut down and no flights out of Israel. The whole thing, it's the left, though. It's not the majority of Israelis. And the point is, just like in France, they pour into the streets. They don't believe in democracy. They don't accept that they lost an election. If they don't get what they want in France or Israel or in this country, they just pour into the streets. Black Lives Matter. They go into the streets and they just destroy property. And now you're starting to see in Israel, actually, now the right is coming out with counter demonstrations. So let's hope that it doesn't turn into violence, because that's very rare for right wingers to go in and demonstrate, and they don't have. You always know it's the left when you have something called day of or week of, like day of rage, day of in Israel. They have a week of paralysis. There's a week where they go in and they just block traffic, and the planes don't fly, yada yada. So what Macron and Netanyahu have in common is they both have to deal with this. They have to decide whether they're going to surrender to the mob, and the left in Israel say, well, we will negotiate if you stop this legislation or pause this legislation. And Netanyahu wasn't going to do it, but he said, okay, I'm going to do it. He's pausing the legislation for 1 month, and he says at the end of the month, one way or another, these reforms are going to go. We're going to have the reforms. If you want to negotiate, this is your chance. They already had 3 months. The process was taking 3 months. Left refused to negotiate unless the legislation was paused. It's paused, but it's ready to be voted on at any minute. They have 1 month. We'll see what happens, but that's the decision that they both have, because now Macron is being pressured to relent from, and France doesn't have the money. That's why they want to raise the retirement age, and that's why it was raised in this country too, and it'll probably be raised again. People are living longer and having fewer children. The money isn't there. Their money is not there to pay for these retirement programs. France, they just don't get it. In Israel, the left, they don't want the right to be able to, they want Israel governed by the left, no matter, even if the right has all 120 seats of the Knesset, they want them to be forced to govern from the left. So it's just, I don't know how they solve it. We'll have to watch and see what happens. They really have to just pass their legislation in France and Israel, and then just let these riots go. Sooner or later, in Israel, for instance, people are going to, even the left, a far left Israeli is going to want to take a trip out of the country sometime, or is going to want to be able to drive down the street without having the streets blocked, and so on and so forth. So they're just going to have to wait them out. And meanwhile, fortunately, the police are enforcing the law and using water cannons, whatever they have to do to, crowd control. So that's my thought for today. My sympathies go out to both leaders in both countries. And thanks for stopping by. If you could subscribe, that would be great. Subscribe. And I would love to see all of you again. Until I do, bye.